Hi everybody, this is Kelly Hernandez. I am going to be showing you the second book that I picked out for my Cinderella stories. Um, like I said in my first video, when we were doing the Cinderella research project, I became really interested in the really old Cinderella stories from different cultures. So, in keeping with that, the second story is actually by the same author as the first one. My first video was The Persian Cinderella by Shirley Climo, and the second one I want to show you is actually The Korean Cinderella by Shirley Climo with a different illustrator. This one's illustrated by Ruth Heller. Typically, I wouldn't like to go with a book by the same author, but I liked these because they were from such different cultures and the stories were so completely different. And I just wanted to get, I wanted to get some really different variations of the story, um, instead of just the same story that we've become so accustomed to. So that's why I ended up going with these. So this story is about a young girl named Pear Blossom who um, well, basically, the story starts out with an old man and an old woman in Korea, and as far as setting goes, it says long ago in Korea, and I tried to do some research and look up and see when the story was actually set, and all I could find is in everything said ancient Korea. I couldn't find any details as far as where it was set. Um, the only thing I did find is one source said that it was 300 years ago, but everything else I read said ancient Korea, which 300 years ago doesn't sound particularly ancient to me, and I think the story is supposed to be a lot older than 300 years, so um, I'm guessing it's older than 300 years, but it says long ago in Korea, when magical creatures were as common as cabbages, there lived an old gentleman and his wife. For years they longed for a child to share their tile-roofed cottage. At last a daughter was born. Good fortune, the old man exclaimed. I'll plant a pear tree in the courtyard to celebrate this day. And Pear Blossom will be our daughter's name, the old woman added. So here are the illustrations for the first page. And there is some foreshadowing on with the illustrations on this page. You'll notice along with the old man and woman and their little baby daughter there, Pear Blossom, you'll also see some birds and an ox and a frog, and those will come up later in the story. So, like I said, there's some foreshadowing with this one. And then I also, we'll start here with kind of the building and the trees. I guess that's probably the pear blossom tree back there. We see that kind of mature as the story goes on and blossom. Um, but the house we see is a lot different from houses we're used to here, but definitely has more of a Korean feel to it. But I wanted to point out kind of this design down here. This is becomes a really common theme with this book, not just the design itself, but the specific colors, this green, orange, and kind of a purplish bluish color. It was such a strong presence in the book that I actually ended up going and looking up the colors to see if they had any particular meaning in Korean culture. And I did find a couple of interesting things. One, or not one, but a couple of sources I found said that green represents good luck, which will be an interesting note further on in the story. You could say that Pear Blossom, the young maiden in the story, does have some good luck further on in the story, and then depending on if you want to classify that as a purplish color, because like I said, it's a bluish purplish, it could kind of go either way. Purplish, you could say, kind of goes with the royalty theme, which um, not to be a spoiler alert, but it is a Cinderella story, so you could kind of gather where we're going with it. But it could go with the royalty. If you said it was a bluish hue. There's an interesting theory I have. When I looked up blue in Korean culture, it said that it represents a cool feminine energy. So I thought that was kind of neat because with it being a Cinderella story and the feminine energy. And this particular story, Pear Blossom, kind of has a little bit of a stronger energy than than like the Persian Cinderella, the last book I reviewed. So it was just kind of an interesting note that or at least I thought so when I was looking into that. Um, so anyway, they have their baby girl that they name Pear Blossom. And then it shows her kind of growing up through her childhood, and it shows how her mom put a white ribbon on her hair in the spring and it says a yellow ribbon. It looks kind of orange in the picture, but a yellow ribbon in her hair to match the fruits in the summer. And, or no, I'm sorry, actually, it says a gold ribbon rather in her hair to match the fruits in the summer. And then in the fall, um, uh, yeah, in the fall, they dressed her in a yellow gown. But then in the winter, when she was a young child, her mother actually passed away, and then her father was trying to figure out what was going to happen then because she had no mother to take care of her anymore. And so her father decided, oh, and then you'll notice again, we've got more of these designs and these orange and green colors. Oh, and to go back to the colors, like I said, I found that green meant good luck, and that, we have the purple to mean royal and the blue to mean um, feminine energy, but I couldn't find any meaning for orange. So there was a lot of orange in the designs, but I couldn't find anything specific that meant. So I thought that was interesting. I'd be interested if anyone could find what that meant. If you happen to find anything on that, I'd be interested to know. But there was a lot more orange on the page too. But so the father is concerned about his daughter and what's going to happen to her. So he actually goes to a matchmaker and decides to find a wife. And the matchmaker sets him up with a woman who has a daughter and says they would be perfect. It's a 2-for-1 special. It literally says that. Well, it says 3-in-1, a wife for you and a mother and sister for Pear Blossom. So he sets them up with this stepmother and stepdaughter, which will be a new family for Pear Blossom. So you can see the mother and stepdaughter, stepsister, and then of course there's more of this design all over this page. So the stepmother and stepsister end up being incredibly cruel to Pear Blossom. They make her do ridiculous tasks. They make her they tell her that the fire's too cold, or that it's too cold, the fire's gone out. So they tell her to fetch wood, and then when she goes and gets wood and feeds the fire, then they tell her it's too hot, and they tell her to go get water, and so they just run her in circles basically all the time. And it says that they have her up before morning and that she works until after midnight, where her only company is the crickets. So you can see here there's the stepmother and stepsister ordering her around. More of this green, orange, and blue. This time it's clearly blue. It doesn't look purple at all. So more of those designs. And you can tell their clothes, I mean, they're a lot different than like the clothes in our common Cinderella tales that we're used to. It's definitely more Asian influence there. So the illustrations are quite a bit different than what we're used to seeing in our Cinderella storybooks that we've grown up with. And then this next page is just an illustration showing her up, or yeah, up late with the crickets, doing chores. So I just wanted to show that one real quick. Oh, and there's some good examples I figured I'd show you of texture on this page, with the woven baskets and everything, and the corn. So it says it gets worse and worse as the years go by. They start calling her Little Pig or Pigling. That's her nickname, is Pigling. And then so we get to this point in the story where there's this big water jug, and they tell her, they start to give her these tasks that basically are impossible to complete. So there's this water jug with this huge hole in it, and they tell her that she can't do anything or go anywhere until she gets this jug full. So it's basically this impossible task, because how can you fill a water jug when it has a huge hole in it? So as you can see, there's this water jug. And then I want to point out some of the designs on the building. We've got, with the windows, you can see all the lines, which are definitely indicative of like Asian architecture. So definitely something you would not see here in the US, unless it was, of course, influenced by Asian architecture. So that definitely stood out to me. And again, more of that green and orange pattern at the bottom. But you'll notice, of course, that big jug with the hole in the bottom. So Pear Blossom really has a big problem on her hands. So she says out loud, she says, "Won't anyone help me?" Or she says, "Will none in this world help me?" And she hears this voice that says, "Jug, jug, jug full." And she looks in the jug, and she sees this frog. And remember, I told you at the beginning that there was some foreshadowing on the picture with the baby. The picture with the baby, there was a frog there. Well, here we're in the story, and she looks in the jug, and there's this frog. And then, of course, a whole bunch more of this patterning with the same colors we've experienced over and over and over. And so what happens is the frog, rather, squeezes himself into the hole of the jug, just like a stopper, and says "jug full" again to her. And once he squeezes himself in like a stopper, she says, "Okay," and so she takes it to the water and she fills it up. And with the frog filling the hole like a stopper, she's able to fill the jug full of water. And so when her stepmother and her stepsister get home, they find that the jug is full of water. And of course, they're so angry that she's managed to fill this jug full of water. So they actually spill the water and then make her clean it up, and they're still unbelievably cruel to her. So there it shows them making her clean the water up. More of those same patterns, same colors, after they've spilled the jug of water. And then the next day, they give her another huge task to do. They give her this huge sack of rice, and they tell her that she has to hull all the rice. Her stepmother tells her she has to polish every grain, or else you'll be put in this sack and sent to China. And then they leave for the village. And so Pear Blossom looks around and she sees this rice just everywhere, all over. And again she says, "Will none in this world help me?" And so again we had this foreshadowing earlier in the story with these birds. And then all of a sudden we have these birds on this page that come out of the trees, and they come down, and all these birds hull all the rice for her. And they leave this nice pile of rice. So you see all the birds doing all the work for her, and they leave this nice pile of rice. And again, more of the patterns, more of the colors. So I really grew to like all the patterns and the colors. It's so bright, and It's just completely, like I said, it's completely different from the Cinderella stories that I grew up with. So it's just nice to see different illustrations and just kind of something completely different from what I'm used to. So when the stepsister came back, she found Pear Blossom, and they started to say that, okay, we're sending you to China. And then Pear Blossom said, and well, then they noticed that the rice was all done, and they were like, well, how can that possibly be? And Pear Blossom's like, well, these birds came and helped me. And they started telling her that she must be cheating, and the birds came down and started grabbing the stepsister by the hair. And you can see that in this picture. And then, of course, along with that, we've got more of these patterns in the green and orange, and the birds attacking the stepsister. And then, as a result of that, the stepmother did not give Pear Blossom anything to eat that day or the next. So, the following day after that, there was a festival that was going to be in town. And the stepmother and stepsister told Pear Blossom that she couldn't go to the festival unless she weeded all the rice paddies. So this one is kind of similar to our Cinderella story in a way, because they tell her, oh yes, you can go to the festival if you get this done. But they give her this chore that's completely impossible because it's this huge rice paddy, and there's no way that she can possibly get this chore done in time to be able to go to the festival. So, and they give her some silk and tell her she has to make a dress for her stepsister, and she has to make food for her stepmother and do all these chores before she can go. So it shows her working on this dress and surrounded by all the stuff she has to do. And here we've got, of course, more of the patterns, more of those same colors. And she starts to look around at this field, and she's thinking, what am I going to do? I'm never going to be able to make it in time. I'll never make it to the festival. And she feels this big breath on the back of her neck. And then, once again, for the last time, the foreshadowing from the beginning with this big black ox shows up on this page. Here she is, sad in the field because she has this huge field that she'll never get weeded in time. And all of a sudden this ox shows up, and he starts eating all the weeds in the field, and he starts plowing it for her and getting it all done so that she doesn't have to worry about doing it on her own. And when she peeks through her fingers, the ox and the weeds are all gone, and also there's a basket of fruit there. And so she's completely happy she has this fruit, and she's starting to hurry off to the festival. And as she's walking along the road, she loses one of her straw sandals. So in this story, instead of a glass slipper or a golden shoe, or like in my last one, the Persian Cinderella, where she had a diamond anklet, this one she has a straw sandal that she loses. So here, again, we have more of those patterns, same colors, and we've got that basket of fruit, and then we've got her with her straw sandals, and she's losing her sandal on the way to the festival that she's hurrying to now that she got all her chores done. And then all of a sudden she hears someone yell, make way for the magistrate. And she hears people coming through, and there's 4 bearers with a palanquin swaying on poles across their shoulders, and they're all coming towards her. And in the chair is a young nobleman dressed in robes and wearing a jade jewel in his top knot. And she's so nervous, and she basically kind of hides in the shadows and starts watching him, and is and just watching from afar. And when she does that, she loses her sandal. It falls into the stream and she can't reach it anymore. So you can watch as she hears the magistrate coming along, being carried, looking all royal. And there she is, hiding back there in the shadows. And there's her straw sandal that she lost in the water. And then he yells to stop because he was calling to his men to stop. But Pear Blossom thought he was shouting at her, and so she takes off running. Well, he sees her take off running and thinks she's so beautiful. So he wants to meet her, and he sees her running. Well, then he sees her sandal in the stream and realizes it must belong to her. So he has his men fetch it for him and decides that he's going to find whoever this sandal belongs to. And so he goes back to the village. Meanwhile, Pear Blossom goes, of course, off to the festival and forgets all about her missing sandal, and she just enjoys the festival and enjoys her basket of fruit. So it shows him watching her run away and thinking she's so beautiful. And there's her enjoying the festival. It doesn't really show anything about the festival here. It just shows her enjoying her fruit, but it doesn't show... Actually, no, I take it back. I forgot there's the next page that has the festival separate from her. We have the gong, which of course is an Asian cultural reference. The dragon. More of those nice bright colors. And then her stepmother and stepsister see her there, and they ask what on earth she's doing there, and she says that a black ox helped her finish the weeds, and they say that she must be lying, or that she's doing magic. Well, then the magistrate's bearers show up, and they say that they're looking for the woman who's lost her shoe, and the stepsister and the stepmother they realize that Pear Blossom has lost her shoe, and they point her out because they think that the magistrate is looking for her for something bad, and they point Pear Blossom out, and they're like, it's her, you're looking for her, and they're like, now you're going to get what's coming to you. So there's the magistrate's men, and that's the stepmother pointing her out, saying she's missing a shoe, and they're feeling all smug, thinking that Pear Blossom is going to get what's coming to her. And then the next part says, then she must deserve me as her husband, says the magistrate, for this lucky shoe has led me to her. So he basically comes out and says, the reason I hunted her down is because I want her for my wife. And then I thought it was interesting, the patterns on here changed to just purple and orange, so interestingly enough, the background turns to green, which is this good luck color, and then we go to mostly purple in this pattern, which is like the royal color. So I thought that was kind of an interesting change in color there. So the prince comes out and claims that he wants Pear Blossom to be his wife, and then she, of course, tries on the sandal, and it fits. So that part is in keeping with the traditional Cinderella story that we're used to. So when springtime comes around, they arrange a wedding, and when the pear blossoms are blooming, and it talks about the frog croaking, and it said, this part I can't pronounce it right, I'm sure, but it talks about the frog croaking it's either Iwa or Awa, which it says in Korea means pear blossom. So I'll show you those pictures, but like I said, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But I really love all the picture, or all the colors and pictures on here. And then I wanted to, oh yeah, one more picture I almost forgot about that shows the married couple. And then I wanted to take a note, or take a second to talk about, there's an author's note, which kind of just talks about all the fact that there's so many different Cinderella stories, which I wasn't as interested in that. But the illustrator's note I kind of wanted to talk about. I was hoping it would have some notes about the colors used, and it didn't really, but it did talk about the patterns, because I was so interested in the patterns. So it said the designs, I'm going to go ahead and read the entire illustrator's note just because I thought it was interesting and it helped explain some of the illustrations. So it says the designs found on the cover and throughout this book were inspired by patterns painted on the eaves of Korean temples. These patterns are called tanchong. They are symbols of good luck, protection, and the cycle of reincarnation. The pensions seen, so reincarnation, that probably represents, of course, her mother then, who's passed away. The pendants seen here and on the title page are worn as decoration on the hanbok, the traditional women's dress that consists of two pieces, a skirt tied high under the arms by long ribbons, and a short jacket. No buttons or hooks are used on either male or female dress. The horsehair hat donned by Pear Blossom's father is the mark of a Korean gentleman. The wedding ducks on page 42 are called karoji and are a symbol of fidelity. The long white ribbons seen in the festival illustrations are attached to the hats of men performing the traditional farmers' dance. As the men dance and toss their heads, the ribbons form graceful flowing patterns. The information for these illustrations was gathered in Korea at museums and palaces, at festivals and concerts, and at a village set up to replicate the way Korean people lived 300 years ago. So, I thought this one was super interesting. It was a cool story, very different from the one we're used to. And I just really liked the illustrations. It was just a lot different. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one too. Thank you so much for watching.